the DA has written to arms manufacturer Denel requesting an urgent update on the true status of its financial affairs. This follows allegations that the state-owned arms manufacturer is facing financial woes. The DA is calling Denel to come clean, saying it's received numerous requests for intervention. We're now joined on the line by Denel's Group Chief Financial Officer, Otwa Mhlwana. Mr. Mhlwana, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Now, let's first establish the veracity of the claims made against Denel that the company is suffering a cash crisis, defaulting on supplier payments and 13th checks to employees. How true are these?
Thank you very much, Tabile, for the opportunity. And I think perhaps to put a bit of a context to your question, it's important that the nation understands that Denel is a company essentially of two tails, a pre-2012 tail and a post-2012 tail. Pre-2012, Denel was a company in serious commercial difficulties. And I'm saying commercial difficulties because it was both financial as well as the customer market environment, which was essentially dwindling at the time. And since 2012, which is now the good story of a Denel that we have today, which we should all be proud of, is a Denel that turned its corner, has been profitable consistently since, growing its revenues, growing its profitability at the back of a balance sheet that was relatively weak as a result of the pre-2012 era. So, as an example, for instance, Tabile, in the last 5 years, Denel has grown its revenues and profits more than double. From 5 years ago, Denel was doing about 3.9 billion rands turnover. Today, that business is doing about 8.5 billion rands. And all of that growth had to be funded at the back of this very limited balance sheet, which was eroded by the losses that were made pre-2012. Now, we have been engaging with our shareholder department as well as National Treasury throughout the last 3 years with the view of looking at ways and means of adequately funding this business for it to be able to deliver on the growing business that it does, which majority is actually from international customers. About 65% of Denel's revenue is actually export revenue, which is absolutely critical for our economy in South Africa. So this is not an issue that has found itself into the company overnight, but it's come a long way, and we've been engaging with the shareholder department as well as National Treasury to find creative ways of adequately funding the business. So essentially, it is correct that the business is going through some financial difficulties, but they are at the back of the narrative that I've just given you now.
I want to stay on some of the points that you made. Now, let's look at this good story that you speak of. You mentioned that pre-2012, Denel was going through a tough time commercially. Now, some of these concerns that have been brought to the DA as well as to you regarding the financial status of Denel, are those accurate, and can you state what they are exactly?
Yeah, Tabile, look, the truth of the matter, and I think we owe a lot of gratitude to our partners in the business in the way of our suppliers who have actually walked this very difficult path over the last 4 or 5 years with us, in the sense that it's been very difficult at a liquidity level. We've been engaging with our suppliers on an ongoing basis to have them assist us in trying to get the products that we produce within Denel out there in the customer environment to collect the cash and obviously pay them. And as part of this process, it would have then been inevitable that there would have been suppliers that unfortunately do not get paid on time as they expect to be paid. But we have engaged with our suppliers. They've walked this path with us. We are very thankful to them because up to date, they continue to support us. The same thing with our employees. In fact, throughout this entire period, we have not once missed a payment of salaries to our employees. We've always prioritized those, But it is correct and true that as we speak today, the liquidity challenge has deepened. It's creating difficulties for the business to continue doing what it has to do. But fortunately, with the engagements that we've had, the shareholder department as well as National Treasury, we are very convinced that in a matter of days, a solution will be found.
Now, with regards to your suppliers specifically, can you give us an indication of when outstanding payments will be made?
Look, I think it would be unfair, Tabile, to pin me down to a particular date. And the reason I'm saying this is because throughout all of our engagements with our suppliers, we have made certain promises to our suppliers, which unfortunately over the period we've had to break. And what we have been saying to our suppliers as we are engaging them right now is that at least by the end of Feb 2018, we will have sorted all of these issues. But with the engagement that I referred to, which we are currently having with both the shareholder department as well as National Treasury, we think a solution is imminent even earlier than that.
I think something important that we need to look at are some of those interventions that you mentioned. Now, you said that there's been engagements with shareholders as well as National Treasury. Can you take us through some of those interventions, perhaps step by step, in terms of what will be done to ensure that Denel is back in good form?
It's a good question you're asking, Tabile, and I think it would be important for the nation to appreciate the fact that a business that's grown more than double in the last 5 years without any particular capital injection from the shareholder would have naturally been overly geared towards debt. So Denel has a significant amount of debt within its own balance sheet, which is then creating a situation where we're finding a lot of cash outflow that goes towards servicing such debt in the way of interest. And the engagements that we have been having with both our shareholder department as well as our National Treasury is obviously in two folds. One is an immediate or emergency solution to get the company underway in terms of its suppliers as well as its employees, which unfortunately is still going to go towards a debt solution. But we are obviously engaging with the two principal departments to essentially say the business at the heart of it is actually looking for capital injection. That's what the business really needs. But in the short term, as I say, we are definitely going to go through a further debt instrument to just get us out of the crunch that we find ourselves in. But we continue to engage to find ways of creating capital injection into the business.
Now, just finally, we know that you mentioned earlier on that there hasn't been a month where employees at Denel have never been paid, but we saw earlier on WASA saying that more than 4,000 employers might not get their salaries. Is that accurate, or will employees get their salaries this month?
Look, the solution to that particular matter, Tabile, lies with the discussions that I referred to with both National Treasury and DPE, which I say in a matter of days, we think a solution will be on the table. The risk is there, but we are managing the risk. And by the way, I must state it categorically clear that if I say to you we have more than doubled over the last 5 years, literally on a monthly basis, we've sat with a situation where up until the last day when we have to run the payroll for the employees, we are essentially phoning our customers, begging them to essentially make the payments that they owe us. So we have been managing the business in this fashion for the last 3-4 years. And what we are essentially talking about now is to find a sustainable mechanism to fund this business that it can carry on to execute the work that it does. I must just add this to you, Tabile, that this is a business that essentially is sitting with 19 billion rands worth of signed orders that need to be executed. So we are not talking about a business that's battling from a commercial sense. We are talking about a business that's actually done fantastically well in terms of advancing the developmental agenda that it's supposed to do, while ensuring that commercially it remains sustainable. And all that which we are asking for is that we ought to be adequately funded to execute on this 19 billion rands, which is growing on a daily basis, and that we can then collect the cash that's due to us from our customers.
We'll have to leave it there, Mr. Mhlwana. Thank you very much for joining us on SABC News. That was Denel's Group Chief Financial Officer, Odwa Mhlwana.